All right, welcome to AJ Sports with Ezekiel. I'm Ezekiel. Thank you so much for coming around. I hope that you will definitely be impacted by all that you listen to on this very episode of AJ Sports with Ezekiel. This is my very first attempt at recording a podcast, and so I really hope it goes great. Thank you so much again for coming around. Thank you for deciding to start with us. Thank you for deciding to tune in to this very first episode to see what AJ Sports is all about, why AJ Sports in the first place, and what inspired me to start a podcast. So why AJ Sports in the first place? If you have seen from the posters or pictures about this podcast, you know that AJ Sports stands for Apologetics for Jesus podcast. It's going to be about apologetics. And apologetics is the art and science of effectively defending one's belief with reasoned arguments, with the aim of persuading and convincing one's listeners that what one is defending is true and accurate. How did I come about the name AJ Sports with Ezekiel? Well, when I decided I wanted to start a podcast, I thought I was just going to use my name, Ezekiel, which many people are pronouncing Ezekarel because of the unique way I spelled it, but it is Ezekiel. I thought I was going to use my name. At the same time, I also asked a friend to suggest a name I could use for my podcast, and she suggested I use AJ Sports. And the reason she suggested I use AJ Sports is because she calls me AJ, which stands for my last name, Ajayi. And many people back in school, even from secondary school down to university, called me Ajayi or AJ. But now many people call me by my middle name, which is Ezekiel. However, later on, I decided that I don't want to use a name for my podcast that points people to me, because the podcast was not about me, but about who I was defending with apologetics. I wanted a podcast that would point people to God. And so I thought, okay, what name do I use? But nothing occurred to me all through while I thought about a name for my podcast. But I said I didn't want to delay in starting my podcast just because I didn't have a good fancy name for my podcast. And so I went back to thinking about AJ Sports, which my friend suggested. And while I was just thinking about it, something occurred in my mind. Apologetics for Jesus. So AJ Sports is Apologetics for Jesus podcast. And that's how I decided to choose this name, AJ Sports with Ezekiel. What inspired me to start off this podcast in the first place? Well, here's it. In 2024, April to be precise, the original idea I had in mind after a very wonderful program at the church that I attend the Vivified Church, and I really have been blessed. I've grown a lot in my Christian faith and my journey with God, and it's just a wonderful community of believers that God has put me in the midst of, and I'm super glad and thankful to be a part of the Vivified Church. So they organized a Vision Summit program, and in that Vision Summit program, we're charged up to go out there to see the vision of reaching the world. And one of the charges was geared towards driving us to impact whatever sphere of influence we found ourselves in. And I am a video content creator. I create adverts, I create social media posts and things like that for different clients, brands, and all of those things, right? I also really want to go into 3D animation. So I'm a video content creator, and I had the idea of, okay, I'll start creating YouTube tutorials on, tips and tricks on how to do this and that in the softwares that I use, how to do this when working with audio, how to get assets and all of these things. And I also planned on recording videos, sharing my faith, because I am passionate about evangelism. I want people to really know God. I really want people to know God. And I want every obstacle that anyone from knowing God to be removed. Apart from sharing videos of me preaching the gospel, I plan on sharing some clips of me playing video game. I love to play Asphalt Legends Unite, and I plan on showing off, probably winning first in multiplayers. Just a general thing. I also planned on releasing videos talking about social issues and things that might have been trending at that moment, and just giving some views and opinions and all of these things. So it would have been a general thing, general videos here and there, no niche, just sharing different things. But a day came in October 2024. I saw a video on YouTube. It was of a Muslim apologist, Dr. Zach Naik, debating a Christian, and he was trying to answer some questions. I had him give rebuttals to popular answers to objections about certain things in Christianity, and I was quite impressed by his rebuttals. But it was much later I went back to start thinking about the video I watched. And I was like, no, this one does not add up. Why are you defending what you are just saying now with the Bible that you say you don't believe? And I was like, is it possible I could write a document? Just different things, addressing his objections, addressing his responses, and all of these things, and somehow post on social media that can get to him. And then you read it and you say, wow, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and things like that. But later on, I thought it might not even get to him. He might not read it and it might not be effective. Then I thought about, okay, maybe I could record short clips of myself answering some of these questions or things that he shared, put the video alongside with my own video and post on Instagram and post on YouTube. And probably, because whether you like it or not, Dr. Zach Naik had a huge audience. I think it was in a stadium that this was done, and I was like, maybe some of those audience there would come across my video and they would change their mind. That was just what I wanted. Before you know it, I started thinking along the line of, okay, do I do a podcast? Do I do a podcast? Do I do a podcast? And then I got the idea I want to do a podcast. And so here is why I'm doing this podcast, to focus on apologetics. God has given me the ability to share this gospel message with things that we all can easily relate with. I've been out there preaching the gospel and I've seen this at play. I've recognized it and I want to use it to even go further. And so this is part of what I really want to focus on in this podcast, Apologetics for Jesus. Apologetics with simplicity, with relatable examples, explanations that everyone can understand. Yes, there are wonderful podcasts out there with scientific terms. Yes, I would do that, but I will break it down to what you and everyday people can understand. So there are podcasts, believe you me, even Reasonable Faith by William Lane Craig, with big scientific terminologies, but that's not why we are here. We are here to break the truth down. And I think that's something that I love about the pastor of my church, Pastor Kenneth of the Unified Church. He teaches with simplicity. And so this is why I am doing AJ Sports, Apologetics for Jesus. We are not just going to be talking about people's debates and things like that. We are going to have other things that we will talk about. The introductory episodes will be about why am I doing this podcast in the first place. The next episode will be, am I a Christian? What do I believe about the gospel? You want to know what I believe, because if I'm going to be talking to you about Jesus, you want to ensure that I have the right foundation so that I can talk to you right here about Jesus Christ. We are going to talk about how to share the gospel, how not to share the gospel, what the gospel really is all about. Because whether you like it or not, there is a wrong way to preach the gospel. There is a right way to preach the gospel. We are going to also talk about how to preach to people of other religion, most especially Islam, because that is a fast-growing religion and we want to save as many people as we can. I'm going to share what they believe about Christianity, what they believe about Jesus, who they call Prophet Isa, what the Quran says about him, responses, how to ensure that you can even evangelize to a Muslim based on the things that they have written about Prophet Isa in the Quran, and show them that Jesus is indeed more than a prophet. Along the way, we will also talk about some scientific things like the Big Bang Theory. I have some wonderful titles that I'm going to give this. The title is going to be I'd rather believe in the science that I've seen than in the science that I've not seen. I would also talk about abortion and probably quite a number of things that people term gray area. Maybe the Bible is not really focused on it and it seems to be a gray area. We'd look at things not just from the Bible, but we'll look at things that can be observed in the world that God has created. We'll look at it from a wide spectrum of things. Like, for instance, now when it comes to abortion, way long before I even knew what apologetics was all about, I knew how to talk about abortion from different standpoints. From the standpoint of medicine, from the standpoint of law, from the standpoint of the mother, the father, or the parties involved, from the standpoint of even the Christian faith. So there's a lot to look at. It just becomes clear when you begin to bring these relatable examples, when you begin to paint these pictures. Maybe someone sees and says, no, this can't be. This can't be. I have been wrong. I should change. Like the word repent means metanoia, or that's the Greek word. It means repent. It means change your mind, change your mind, change your mind. And so we are going to cover a lot. What I'm telling you is going to be apologetics with simplicity. We're also going to look at different debates and other things that might arise later on in the future. Maybe if God willing, we can start inviting guests, whether famous or not famous, people to share different things that will just be a blessing to you, my listeners. So thank you so much for coming around to this podcast. Thank you so much for listening to AJ Sports with Ezekiel. I know that your life would definitely be impacted by this podcast. My goal is to equip you with the ability to rightly defend the faith that you believe in. And if you are not a Christian yet, if you are not a believer, to help you find God. Because like I always say, you need God to know God. Thank you so much for coming around. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll see you next week. Thank you.